Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I am your host, Tyler Harper, and hopefully this edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia is a little more enjoyable than the Eagles-Cowboys game from this past Sunday. But nevertheless, let me introduce you to my great panel this week. We got Anthony Fleet, Jordan Green, and Alec Constable, all there down the line ready to talk Philly sports with you. As much as we kind of don't want to, because this Eagles-Cowboys game, it wasn't pretty. Let's take a look at the final score there. Eagles falling to the Dallas Cowboys 20-10 in a game that even Troy Aikman at one point just said this was not a great game by any stretch of the imagination. Brandon Weeden, who came in for an injured Tony Romo, went 7 for 7, 73 yards and a touchdown. Terrence Williams had 4 catches, 84 yards, and he caught the touchdown pass. And Kyle Wilber returned a 26-yard punt that was blocked. He returned it for a touchdown. No matter which way you look at it, this game was bad. Again, coming back from a break, Troy Aikman even called this game bad right as he was welcoming in a new audience. But how bad was this game? This is supposed to be like Class A division rivalry football, and it wasn't.
Embarrassing, dreadful, awful, terrible, any variation of the word, any variation of the word that you can think of. This was a disgrace of a football game, especially by the Eagles, who went up against a Dallas team that was undermanned. They didn't have their star wide receiver, Des Bryant. And then halfway through the third quarter, their starting quarterback, Tony Romo, got hurt. And not to mention, the Cowboys were missing a lot of key defensive players as well. So you face a team, you're in your home opener. You came off a poor first half performance by the Eagles coming out against Atlanta opening week. So you expected the Eagles to come out really strong. You expected them to really hand it to the Cowboys in front of the home crowd with all the emotion and all the momentum just rallying up. You expected to carry over from the Atlanta Falcons game, and it didn't happen. They only had one first down via penalty in the first half. It was just extremely frustrating to watch them not be able to get anything going. As soon as DeMarco Murray would get the ball, he's getting tackled. It's like as soon as he gets the ball, bam, there's 2 or 3 defenders right in his face. And it was frustrating for him. It was frustrating for the fans at Lincoln Financial Field. It was frustrating for everybody to watch.
Jordan?
I'm not sure what I would pin this game on, to be completely honest with you. Coaching, effort. Apparently, from what we thought, there was a lot of talent on this team, but it's not showing up at the moment. A lot of people are living off their names. And some of the personnel decisions seem to be biting Chip in the butt. The offensive line is probably the biggest reason that this team is failing right now. But like Anthony said, it's just disappointing. It's one of the most lackluster efforts I've seen from the Eagles team in quite some time.
Alec?
This was just terrible. I mean, it was a terrible game. I mean, this 3-headed dragon that was supposed to be these 3 great running backs had like a total of, 17 yards or so? It's more like a 3-headed kitten than a 3-headed dragon. I mean, it was just terrible game all around. And the fact that the Eagles couldn't take advantage of all the penalties that Dallas had. They set a franchise record for penalties in that game, and they could not take advantage. It was just sad.
Yeah, sad's whatever word you want to use. Sad is pretty accurate. Last week, of course, the loss to the Falcons. Everyone was, a good amount of people, especially on the show, we were saying, remain calm. This is just first game jitters. We'll be able to go out and capitalize against a weakened Dallas team. Clearly that didn't happen. So the question is, and Alec, we'll start with you. It's not time to panic yet, but how close are we drifting?
I mean, it's time to worry, not time to panic yet. You're 0-2. You still have a shot. They're still there. You still
14
have
14
more games if you could try to get through, but it's starting to look a little miserable around Philadelphia.
Yeah, just a little bit, and especially when the Pope's coming too. Jordan?
I felt the Dallas game was a must-win, and this Jets game is certainly a must-win if they want to even be competitive this year. Because, once a team goes down that 0-3 slide, the rest of the team tends to get lackadaisical and, not give the effort that's needed. A lot of people start looking towards the draft. So the Jets game is certainly a must-win, and I'm not very optimistic for the team at the moment. They have a lot of things to figure out.
Yeah, we'll get to the prediction poll in a little bit, but Fleet, I'll start with you on this. I mean, at one point during the game on Sunday, in the second half, a lot of people were starting to boo Eagles' decisions left and right. And, of course, that falls on Chip Kelly, who's not only head coach, but he's basically GM at this point. How much is Chip Kelly really playing with fire at this point? Yeah, I mean, it's only 0-2, but if the ship doesn't get righted quickly, things could fall downhill fast.
Right, and the fact that we're in Philadelphia doesn't make it any easier for Chip, because fans and the media, on top of that, are so passionate, and they had to deal with pathetic performances from all the other teams, especially the Phillies and the Sixers being two of the worst teams in their respective leagues. You have these high expectations for the Eagles to perform and to perform well, especially coming out of the preseason when it looked like there was promise. But now, everybody's starting to question Chip. And when the Eagles were scoring 40 points a game during preseason, Chip was great. All of his moves seemed to have worked. But now that they came out in the regular season and struggled, everybody's starting to doubt him. And I wouldn't say that he's necessarily on a hot seat or anything like that. Like, obviously, you need to win games here in Philadelphia in order to get the fans and the media back behind you. But as far as his job security, I'm sure it's still his job to lose. And that's why he continues to just do things the way that he does without really worrying about what anybody else has to say. But at the same time, we need to see a much better product on the field.
Jordan, how hot is Chip Kelly's seat getting?
It's not too hot in terms of his job security per se, like Anthony said, but in terms of the pressure that he's going to feel, remember, he put this bullseye directly on his back, and players that he shipped out of here had a whole lot of negative things to say about him. Kerry Williams about how he, managed the time of possession, and Shady McCoy and Deshaun Jackson. All these players that he shipped out had a lot of negative things to say. And some of that looks like it's coming into fruition right now, to be completely honest with you. So he's got a lot to prove.
All right, Alec, you started to mention the run game a little bit, but let's look at DeMarco Murray's stats here from this past game, because as everyone's mentioned, actually, these are his stats total right now, guys, and they're not great. 21 carries, 11 yards, all those negative yards, 1 touchdown. We'll get to my question down at the bottom there a little bit, but Alec, we'll start with you. How much of this is on Murray, and how much of this is on the offensive line? Because keep in mind, Chip Kelly let Todd Harrimans go, eventually let Evan Mathis go, and didn't exactly fill the void of two former Pro Bowl linemen, excuse me. Wow, my brain's a little all over the place from this game right now. So, Alec, how much of it do you think is Murray, and how much do you think is the offensive line?
I'm going like 70% is the offensive line, 30% Murray. But the decisions on who we shipped out in the offseason from that offensive line are starting to really hurt us now. I mean, just look at this mess from the rushing game, and especially this guy you brought in, you thought it was just going to be like, oh, wow, now we have this explosive running backs in Murray, in Matthews, in Sproles, and now look at it, it's just like it's all falling apart.
Jordan?
It's got to be very embarrassing for the offensive line, because when quarterbacks, quarterbacks are out rushing last year's league-leading rusher. And one of a lot of the naysayers, detractors to the DeMarco Murray signing said the offensive line isn't as good as it is in Dallas. And that's true, but we didn't think to this extent, to where the guy can't even surpass, 20, what did he have, 19 yards on the season? It's something atrocious. So it's really shocking. And he's got to, you think if he's human, he's got to have some regrets right now. We only know what he said to Tony Romo when they spoke at the middle of the field, but you better believe if he had his way, he'd probably go back.
Fleet, we know what's been happening with these running backs, and we know that DeMarco Murray, he was a different kind of back than Shady McCoy, and now people are starting to question whether or not the scheme really fits DeMarco that well, if he should have made the decision to sign with them. It's only been 2 regular season games, but what do you think this signing might have been a bad choice scheme-wise?
I don't think it's been a bad choice at all. I thought it was a really good choice. If you're going to get rid of a running back of the caliber of LaShawn McCoy, you would want to replace him with an exceptional running back in DeMarco Murray. And it's hard to try to get anything going when your offensive line in front of you aren't creating any holes. As I said earlier in the show, as soon as he gets the ball, there's 2 or 3 guys right in his chest ready to tackle him. And it's hard to get a rhythm going, and it's hard to get anything going. It's certainly frustrating for him to want to establish a running game because his offensive line isn't performing to the capability that not only we expected on this panel, but also fans everywhere, and especially the players. Nobody saw this poor performance from the offensive line really coming. Like, yeah, we knew it would be a step back because you got rid of the guards, as we all talked about. But at the same time, schematically, this is a good system for DeMarco Murray. It's just a matter of him being able to get some holes created for him so he can do what he has to do.
All right, now we shift from the big running back they got in the offseason to the quarterback that they got in the offseason, Sam Bradford. These stats aren't really too much better. This is from the Dallas game, 23 for 37, 224 yards, 1 touchdown pass in garbage time to Jordan Matthews, 2 interceptions, 5.3 quarterback rating. Guys, which Sam Bradford from this past 2 weeks is the real Sam Bradford? Fleet, we'll start with you.
I think it's still the second half. Atlanta, Sam Bradford is the real Sam Bradford. I think seeing DeMarco Murray not be able to get himself going, I think that really probably shook Sam Bradford up to see how his offensive line wasn't really protecting the run game. And I'm sure that really got into Sam Bradford's head, so he probably really started to press. And the fact that it's a home opener, you know, there's tons of pressure on him coming off of a loss in a kind of a must-win situation. You know, Philly fans are crazy. And so there's just so much pressure and so much expectation placed upon Sam Bradford, and he probably let it get to him. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for another week. Of course, you know, terrible performance as you see with his statistics, but still, I think that second half Bradford, when he can get a rhythm going, when they can establish at least somewhat of a run game, he'll start to hit some open targets because that'll just space the field a little bit more, and hopefully moving forward, we see that second half of Atlanta, Sam Bradford versus what we've seen the other 6 quarters.
Yeah, Jordan, this past week in his press conference, Sam Bradford said that he looked back at the tape and he noticed that his footwork was kind of a little off. Do you think that's all of what's happening here, or do you think there could be something more?
The book isn't finished on Sam Bradford, but for what's been written so far, it's a lot of the same. He has all the arm talent in the world. I was a fan of his at Oklahoma. Yeah, he's had injury problems, but even when he's played, when things are going right, he's great. You say, wow, this is elite talent, and then things aren't going so great. It's like everything tumbles down, and he just doesn't keep it all together. So I'm not sure what's next for Bradford, but again, it's a lot of the same. Quarterbacks aren't going to have perfect circumstances. Aaron Rodgers' offense line has been subpar for years, but he gets the job done. Bradford has to raise the level of play for his receivers and the offensive line because that's what quarterbacks get paid to do.
And speaking of receivers, let's talk about Jordan Matthews, who is really the Eagles' #1 receiver right now. 16 catches on 22 targets, but of course, he's had some pretty significant drops, 182 yards, and like I mentioned, a touchdown towards the end of the Dallas game. And Alec, we'll start with you. Like I mentioned, Jordan Matthews, so far he's been doing pretty well, but he's had some drops that have really hurt, especially the drop pass that became an interception at the end of that Atlanta game. So how much do you think these drops have been really affecting Jordan Matthews?
I mean, I think they're there in his head, and he can definitely feel it. But what I really think is the pressure that he's getting put on him, that's what's causing these drops, because he is really their #1 receiver, and there aren't that many more targets in the Eagles' offense through the air that they can go to. So I think the pressure's on him to be their #1 receiver, and I feel like that's what's causing these drop passes.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Jordan?
I agree, but Jordan Matthews showed at Vanderbilt he could handle a lot of volume and a lot of targets. He caught a lot of balls when he played in the SEC in college and broke records. So I expect some of the same for him now. I'm not going to give him these excuses. He puts high expectations on himself. We always hear about how he's the cousin of Jerry Rice and the work ethic. But now that things are tough, he really has to step up and be a leader, even if he's a second-year player. Guys like Ertz and Aguilar, Huff, Riley Cooper, they're not helping him right now to take some pressure off him, but that still doesn't excuse the drops.
Yeah, I mean, you said he's got to step up. Well, let's face it, a lot of Eagles have to step up. An entire team has to step up this week against a 2-0 New York Jets team. So let's take a look at our prediction poll for this week. And bad news, I picked the Jets, guys. But good news, I'm not alone. 3 of 4 people on this panel picked the Jets as well. I'm going 24-14, and I know he may not play. He's been practicing limited, but if Darrelle Revis does play, I think he or someone else in that secondary, maybe Antonio Cromartie, will have definitely an impact, and they could definitely read Bradford for a big pick. So again, I'm picking the Jets 24-14. Anthony Fleet 21-13 New York Jets. And you've got the Jets D-line led by Muhammad Wilkerson of Temple of all schools as your standout star. Take us through that pick.
Yeah, by no means do I think the Jets are one of the elite teams in the NFL, but they do have an elite defense. And just coming off of the performances that we've seen from each team this week, it leads me to believe I had to really see the Eagles be able to put together some good offensive drives before I can believe that they can do so. Like, I have to see it to believe it. And the Jets, their defense is much more than formidable. You said as that defensive line, they're really stout. And with this Eagles struggling, and with the Eagles offensive line struggling the way that they are, that this defensive line, they're licking their chops. They're ready to just
absolutely
bust through this offensive line and, injure whoever they have to, and, just take down, if it's Ryan Matthews, if it's Darren Sproles, because I don't think DeMarco Murray will be in the lineup. And especially targeting Sam Bradford. They're going to be I believe they're going to be like Wolverines, just ripping through this offensive line.
Yeah.
And as I said, until they show me that they can perform better, I just have to pick against them.
Yeah, and because this Jets team beat a very formidable foe in the Colts this past week. So, Jordan, you're taking the Jets as well. 17-13, a little closer game. And you've got Brandon Marshall on the offensive side of the ball as your MVP. Take us through it real quick.
I have a hard time seeing the Eagles contain Brandon Marshall. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is a lot better in that offense with his former offensive coordinator than maybe we realize, than I certainly realized. And I think the Jets' offense is actually pretty decent, but that's not even their strength. I think the Jets' defense is a really bad matchup for the Eagles' offense. Their secondary is elite. They could press you, play you man all over the field, and their defensive line really, really goes in on opponents. And I don't think it's going to be pretty. Andrew Gardner's, I don't think he's ready for what he's going to see.
All right, and Alec being the ever-optimistic one, 17-16 Eagles, and Zach Ertz, real quick, take us through that pick.
Barely the Eagles win. I say Zach Ertz finally gets some good looks on the offense, taking away some pressure. So that's pretty much it. We'll see what happens, but I went back and forth between this pick.
I wish I had your optimism this week. I'm sorry, it's not the case. Speaking of optimism, let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies, right? Yeah. Right? Never mind. But Pete Mackanin has been named the Phillies manager for next season, taken the interim tag, has been taken off. 31-47 as Phillies manager so far. Named the interim manager after Ryan Sandberg stepped down midseason. Guys, Alec, I'll actually start with you on this. Was this the right move? Because, I get the process of they want this to be an audition for the new GM, whoever that may be. But, obviously, 31-47, it's not exactly standout. What do you think?
I think it's a good signing to bring him in another year. He's been a coach on the Phillies for a decent little bit now. And as the head coach, the record doesn't show what he's actually done. That stretch off the All-Star break was a great stretch and shows what the Phillies baseball really can be. And I like seeing that they're bringing him back, see what he can do with the young guys. He's a very different guy than Sandberg was. He's a lot more outspoken, and I feel like that's a type of manager that the Phillies need right now.
Yeah, Jordan, like Alec mentioned, people are kind of talking about the Pete Mackanin effect that was on this team right after the All-Star break. And they were talking about how Pete Mackanin was more interactive than Sandberg was. Sandberg, it seemed like people were saying he was kind of just basing it off his Hall of Fame player reputation, where he was just thinking, all right, I'm a Hall of Famer. If I tell these guys to do something, they're going to do it. Clearly, that was not the case. So do you buy into the Pete Mackanin effect here?
I buy into it, at least in the short term. I think with this generation of players, it's important that you connect to them and, don't just try to put yourself above them. I think development is really crucial at this point for the Phillies, and this guy's done it at all levels, not to a great, like a phenomenal extent per se, but he's managed at several levels. In 1995, he won the league championship in the minor league. That was a long time ago, but that just shows you he's done it. He's used to working with younger players. I think it's more of a stopgap measure, to be honest with you, but for the time being, I don't think it's going to hurt the team. So. Anthony, what do you think?
Right. Generally, I like the idea of hiring a general manager and letting that general manager select your manager. But with that being said, this signing kind of makes sense because as Alec mentioned, they had such a great run coming off the All-Star break. You know, he really did a good job of inspiring the team to play good baseball despite having the worst record in the majors going into the All-Star break. And also, as Jordan was mentioning, you know, he has a connection with these young players because he's been managing in the minor leagues for such a long time, and he's always been developing players since he's been with the Phillies organization. So it makes sense. I like the signing personally. I wasn't a big fan of the Sandberg signing, but I can really live with this signing because I think he'll do a good job of continuing to develop players and motivate players to want to play good baseball.
All right, well, let's move on to one of these younger players that he's trying to motivate, and that's Odubel Herrera. And it's funny, he actually has a connection to McCann in a little bit, but let's look at Herrera's stats: a .292 batting average, 8 home runs, 40 RBI, 15 stolen bases, and he leads the team in batting average. Fleet, we'll start with you. He was a Rule 5 pick, a converted, I believe, either second baseman and or shortstop, and they moved him to center field, and he's made some nice plays out there, of course, during the Cole Hamels no-hitter, a couple nice catches. This is a great pickup, right?
Yeah, I would say so. He started opening day, and when I saw his name in the lineup, I was like, wait, who is this guy? Like, I never even heard of him. And he's performed pretty consistently throughout the season. I used to just thought with his statistics. So it's been a pleasant surprise, to say the least, because a lot of their young players that they had hope in, such as Dominic Brown and Darren Ruff, they haven't really reached their potential, or at least their projected potential. So you hope Odubel Herrera can build on this really impressive rookie season and just keep developing and progressing moving forward.
Now we go from the positive to the negative, unfortunately, because Alec, this past week, a little bit of a mishap between McCannon and Herrera. As Herrera popped out in a game, he didn't really hustle it out, so McCannon didn't like what he saw. He pulled him from the game, and then you saw shots the rest of the game of Herrera pouting. He wasn't exactly happy, and then McCannon went so far as to call him out in the media after the game, saying he needs to play like a man. And then after that, well, he got the interim tag ripped off his title. So a little interesting chain of events there, but how do you think Pete McCannon handled that situation, Alec?
I'm all right with it. I've heard some people not liking what Pete McCannon said, but I'm fine with it because Odubel Herrera has acted somewhat childish during the season. I've seen it a lot towards the umpires, especially. Like he'll be, if like something was like should have been a ball or should have been a strike, something just like he give him a look, something like that. I mean, he isn't playing like a man, and I think he needs to get a little level-headed so he can understand what it means to be a Major League Baseball player.
Jordan, real quick, your thoughts on Odubel Herrera?
I like him. I think he's progressed pretty well. I wasn't sure about him, the first few times I saw him, but I think he's definitely a bonus to some of the prospects that the team is going to be built around moving forward. I don't know if he's necessarily one of your core players, but you need those guys that can do a little bit of everything.
All right, and with that in mind, now we move on to the Fast Five, of course, everyone's favorite segment here on Sports Talk Philadelphia. 5 rapid-fire questions for the panel. Anthony Fleet, we start with you. You're a Philadelphia native. How excited are you for the Pope to be coming to the city?
I think it's cool and all that he's coming, but I'm not going to be participating in any festivities whatsoever. I'm going to stay away from Center City. I don't want to deal with all the traffic and all the people and all the chaos going on down there. But I'll keep my eye on it on television. But as far as, having any hands-on experience with that, I'm okay.
You know what? I think that's fair enough. There's going to be a lot of traffic in the city. It's going to be hectic for the next couple days. Jordan Green, if you played in the NFL, what position would you want to play and why?
Probably wide out. Probably wide out. You don't get dinged up too much. You kind of avoid some of the traffic, and you get the touchdown celebrations.
I was going to say, you've got a nice touchdown.
I was a fan
dance,
of T.O. back in the day, yeah.
All right. Alec, if you can pick one, who's the Phillies MVP this season?
I'm going to go with Jeff Francoeur.
That would be my guess, too.
Jeff Francoeur has been the heart and soul of the Phillies this year, from late-inning heroics to just being all-around good guy. Jeff Francoeur is my guy.
Yeah, by default, he's kind of the MVP of this team. And I love Frenchie, but Anthony Fleet, Josh Huff claimed that Dallas, quote, knew the plays. He claimed they were yelling him out on the sideline. How much do you buy into this real quick? I don't know what to make of it.
I mean, I don't know why he would make it up. And I don't believe this was the first time that this issue came up. I can recall, I believe Todd Herman saying the same thing, something similar to where when they would line up, the defense will call out what plays they were going to run. And when you listen to the Seahawks talk after the game that they played last season, they said how easy and simplistic this offense was, and that's why they did such a good such a good job at stopping it. So I don't see why Josh Huff will make that up. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. You know, Chip Kelly, of course, doesn't want to admit that his offense is simple. And, well, he'll say it's simple, but he doesn't want to believe that the defense can telegraph what he's doing. So he's going to tell Josh Huff, like, you know what, even if that is the case, you know, just keep it under the wraps. You don't have to report it to the media. So I'm on Josh Huff's side as far as his comments. And, you know, hopefully Chip can start to develop some more plays and some more schemes to keep the defense on their heels.
As long as we don't have another Spygate or Deflategate or any of that court nonsense of the NFL.
This team might need some of that. I don't know.
And moving on.
Not encouraging sheet.
Of course you're not. And last question, Alec Ostful, will the Phillies hit 100 losses this season?
I don't want to say no. I really don't, but I feel like they will. It's pretty inevitable at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. What a happy note to end this show on, right, ladies and gentlemen? All right, so thank you to my panel today, from Alec to Jordan to Anthony. Thank you guys again for coming on. And thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. And you can keep up with us on social media, as always. You know the drill here, facebook.com/SportsTalk Philadelphia, or you can hit us up on Twitter at LaSalle TV Philly. LaSalle TV at lasalle.edu is the email. You can see all our episodes on YouTube, youtube.com/LaSalle56TV. And lastly, just on the web, lasalle.edu/LaSalle TV. Remember to never stop exploring. All right, thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure to tell everyone about it. And Philadelphia, enjoy your Pope weekend. I'm Tyler Harper. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.